What's up everybody, it's me Retrovan, and we're at another review. This time we're going to be reviewing Jak 3, and I'm going to explain why I think it's the best one in the series. So, story time. What got me into Jak 3 is a pretty straightforward story compared to 1 and 2. I liked 2. Without further ado, let's begin.
I'm sorry. The council is too powerful. There was nothing I know. You just stay alive, you hear me? That's an order. Someone will find you, I promise.
May the precursors have mercy on
So story-wise, Jak 3 starts off with Jak being banished to the wasteland. Daxter and Pecker ended up staying with him, and they both pass out in the desert. Luckily for Jak, though, Ashlyn gave him a little amulet thing that basically, let the Wastelanders know that he was there. And the Wastelanders are basically desert dwellers. And their leader, talks about how he gave him mercy, and how if he wants to live, he needs to finish the arena course, pretty much. So he does that, and he gets a bunch of odd jobs from either Deimos, the leader, Spargus, the monks, or Cleaver, pretty much. And not a lot really happens. They discover some things, they go to the monk temple and all that. Eventually, though, they run into Sig again, and because of the rule of the arena, Sig has to kill him, or Jak has to kill Sig. Sig drops his weapon and refuses to fight Jak, same with Jak. So Deimos, gets both of them captured and tells them, you defiled the purity of the arena, or whatever. So they have to go take out a metalhead nest. And after that, Jak gets into contact with another Jak 2 character, that being Ashlyn. And Ashlyn tells Jak about how Vigor got drunk with power and he's basically run the city now. Jak refuses, and he says he doesn't want to go back, yet he still goes anyways for some reason. Plot convenience, I guess? Anyway, though, Jak and Daxter have to go back to the temple, and they basically end up going through a big gauntlet, I would call it, and they end up in Mars Mine. In the mines, it's Mars' old eco mine, and once they get through it, they run to Vigor again, and Vigor tells them that he attacked the palace himself, and that, it was their little secret. So Jak has to fight a precursor mech and, get through the city again. They get another pretty sweet mod, and they end up running into Kira and Samos again. One of the few times you're gonna really see much of them in the game, as they're not much of a mainstay like they were in the first and second game. Jak tells them what happened, and they tell Jak that he needs to go through the sewers to make it to Southern Haven City. And once he does that, they make it back to the Naughty and notice that Torn's in there. And he said that they made it a Southern HQ pretty much, since they got blocked off from the Northern HQ. Once again, Jak and Daxter have to do odd jobs, but this time there's a cause and an actual reason why they're doing it, rather than feeling like you're doing chores. Because now in the city, you're fighting to help the war effort. You have to do stuff like hoverboard through sections, destroy turrets. There's one really cool part where you have to go to what used to be the farming section of the city, which is now basically metalhead infested, so really cool stuff like that. I should also note that the gun course makes a return as well. You also go back to the wasteland at one point too, and just, again, not much happens in the wasteland aside from getting artifacts that you need to get. There's also a point where there's a new Haven Forest. It's different from the one in Jak 2, because this Haven Forest is, I think Southern Haven Forest. And in that Haven Forest, you have to basically open up these pillars so that you can, look at the precursor viewfinder. But after everything, Jak and Daxter do make it back to the Northern HQ, and they tell Jak about how, they need to defend the HQ. They defend the HQ, they do a few more jobs. Plot-wise, the important parts that happen is Vigor gets dissolved of all powers and privileges, so he's not very happy about that. But he still has his monks, because the monks work with him. After doing a few more odd jobs, like opening up the power station, Jak and Daxter run to Vin again, and they do a little... Daxter basically does a Pac-Man minigame, and they go to the war factory. Oh, there he is, look at him, there's the boy, Errol. Hated this guy, so yeah, not too happy he's back, but he's a pretty decent villain. They kick his ass, and then they get out of there as the place starts to crash. Once they get out, though, they get a message from Seam that they need to go back to the Monk Temple. And when they do, Darkmakers are everywhere, and it seems like the Darkmakers are starting to attack places now. Because after they get the last piece from Seam, they get a message from Deimos that the Darkmakers are now attacking Spargus. Jack defends the village and he gets a piece of armor that was from Deimos' son Morag. After that, they go back to the Precursor viewfinder and Jack gets sucked into the ship, basically, and he basically goes on a mech mission, kind of like the one from Jak 2. But yeah, after that, Jack and Daxter speak to the Precursors. They have to, like, defend the place because there's Darkmakers everywhere, pretty much, and that's basically how the rest of the game goes for the most part. There's a point eventually, though, where they have to go to the Metalhead Tower, and, yeah, they find Errol again, but Errol once again escapes, and now they have to find another way to get him. And that being through the ruins, and it's actually interesting because it's the stadium ruins, which are the ruins of the stadium from Jak 2. And when Jack and Daxter get there, Pecker ends up leaving because he's terrified because there's Darkmaker things going, and it looks like Jack and Daxter, they're not looking too good because they even called for the Wastelanders and they didn't show up until Deimos shows up and basically rams in. After that, Deimos ends up dying after their trek through it because the vehicle basically exploded on him, which, not fun times. Viger then tells Jack that Deimos was his father, and Deimos didn't even know, nor did Jack until Deimos passed. So they end up chasing Viger down the Precursor subrails, and just a heads up, spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, skip to this point. The Precursors are actually a bunch of Daxters, literally just big Daxters. They have the same look, same fur color and everything. And I just remember it being the funniest twist ever. And it is. It's kind of wacky considering the cutscene before was, Jack's father dying. Viger gets turned into an Ottsel, so that's the end of his plotline, basically. And now Jack and Daxter have to go back to the Dark Ship. The Dark Ship does get blown up, but at least one of the terraformer things falls out, and Jack now has to fight it. So first, on vehicle, he has to get it on land, and then after that, him and Daxter have to climb it and take him out. And basically, the story ends there, with Jack and Daxter walking out all badassly and, greeting Sig and Ashland. He even gets a little peck on the lips. The game ends with the Precursors offering Jack to go with them, and it looks like Jack does, but he comes back at the end and, does the same thing Daxter did at the beginning of the game. Also, Daxter got pants. I gotta say, while the story is still pretty good, it's definitely not as good as it was in Jak 2. It's a little, less confusing at least, but there's less, detail to it. Unlike Jak 2, where the characters had a lot of meaning within the whole story, and pretty much every character did, now there's a lot of characters that feel like they're put to the side rather than that. But aside from those critiques, I would definitely say the story is almost as good as 2, but just not quite there.
We meet again, great warrior, but sadly your coming may be too late. You will soon meet the scene of our downfall. It approaches quickly, and I fear we no longer have the power to resist.
Gameplay-wise, it's the exact same as Jak 2. There's not really much I could say in terms of differences, so I'll just say what they added. So basically, the morph gun from Jak 2 has been increased from just the regular weapons to, you get 2 mods for each of them. You get the Wave Concussor, the third one which detonates grenades. For the blaster, you get the Beam Reflexor, most OP weapon in the game. And then one that shoots like a giant saucer pretty much that just destroys everything in its path. For the Vulcan Fury, you get like a large Wave Concussor, I think it's called, and then the Needle Laser, which basically shoots like a ton of little blue gun bullets at it. And then there's the Peacemakers mods, which are, there's the, I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was called, but there's the one that like makes everything anti-gravity. And then there's basically the Supernova, which, the name kind of already explains it. It follows a similar structure to Jak 2, where you have to go mission by mission. Although I think it's a little better than Jak 2 in that way, because even though the city does return, I think it's a lot better than it was in the second game. Because it's not like a bunch of hallways anymore. Well, it kind of is, but like it's kind of more straightforward where you have to go, and you know, you have a war zone, so it's kind of more interesting. Whereas the desert is where the real open world is. That's where, like, you got open desert you can ride in, you got marauders you can fight. That's probably the coolest part of the game. Dark Jack's also got some new powers, like you can shoot like basically a big beam, and you can go invisible as well. So that's the couple of new things you get for Dark Jack. The new eco you get, though, is Light Eco, which we've only seen in the last cutscene of the first game, where Jack can turn into Light Jack now. And there's a lot of moves you can get with Light Jack, like a shield, you can make time go slow, and you can even fly near the end of the game. The new armor pieces you get also increase your health. There's a little bit of, it's kind of cool, like, the way they represent that. Another thing that I think is a lot better than the Jak 2 city is the vehicle play. The vehicles are very fun to use in the desert. They could sometimes be a little bit iffy at times because of their drifting. Kind of a similar problem that I'll have with Jak X when we get to that game. The vehicles you have are the Tough Puppy, which is... Tough Puppy is a pretty weak vehicle, there's no weapons, and it's kind of slow. Then you got the main vehicle, the Sand Shark, which is, you know, it has a turret in it, but it's got a decent speed, but that's about it. Then you got the Dune Hopper, which shoots bombs, and it could jump really high. Then you got Sig's vehicle, which is really sturdy, but it has a very powerful Gatling gun that aims at stuff. The Zoomers are about the same. They drive pretty good. They could be a bit finicky, and you have to kind of make your turns good enough, though. The Jetboard also makes its return with only really one or two differences, but they are pretty solid ones that make it just that little bit better. One, you have a bigger boost that like boosts you up into the air better. You still have all your tricks and everything, but with Circle you can actually attack with the Jetboard now. And that makes the Jetboard a lot better when, like, you know, having to use it but also having to fight enemies at the same time. There's also other vehicles you can unlock with your orbs as well, including many other things. Like the amount of upgrades you can get with the orbs, and the fact that it's not linear like Jak 2, so that's a lot better. You can choose what you want to get. And the amount of orbs you get are a lot more plentiful as well. So you can get stuff like an upgrade to your weapon's ammo capacity, or, you know, an upgrade to your weapon in general, like the beam reflexor can shoot more out, for example. A thing Jak 3 has that is a little weird, and Jak 2, to be fair, did have it, but Jak 3 had a lot of very mini-game feely missions. Some good, some bad, some okay. Ones that I think were kind of bad were the weird top-down ones where you had to, like, shoot the enemies and defend people. Ones I thought were kind of cool, but a little jank was, like, the blast bot missions, and then also other ones like the Daxter missile missions, which are very fun to go through. That Daxter Pac-Man minigame, though, that mission can go suck my ass.
I found some new friends to help me conquer this puny little planet.
You're talking to the Darkmakers.
The music of Jak 3 is really good. It's kind of got its own theming like Jak 2 does, but it still has like that Jak feel to it. Whereas Jak 1 kind of felt more like Crash music, and Jak 2 kind of had like a dystopian thing to it. Jak 3 kind of has more of like a desert sort of feel to it, which is fitting, of course, because that's what it's mainly meant to be. So a lot of the desert areas and some regular areas in the city even kind of have like a deserty feel to the soundtrack, which, you know, fits the theme. It's really good. You know, you got your regular intense tracks and you got other tracks like that. The only critique I will make, though, is when you like put out your weapon or you go on your Jetboard, or when you go on a vehicle, the music doesn't really have a different version for that. It just stays the same, which is kind of disappointing, but it's not a game breaker for sure. I should also note that the environments are very neat and varied. Like, again, you got the desert, you got the destroyed Haven City, you got the return of places like Haven Forest and everything, return of the sewers, you got the cool monk temple to go to. There's a lot of cool locations that are quite varied. And with the day-night cycle still being there, you know, you can get a different feel depending on what time of the day you're at certain levels.
Hey, who you calling crazy? I can't help it if the world is out to get me.
Finn! Wait a minute. Is that you?
Yeah, it's me. Well, actually, no, it's not. I'm a multi-layered hyperlink digimemic bioconstruct superclocked mega memory construct, baby.
Like I alluded to a little bit in the gameplay section, there's a lot of secrets you can unlock with your precursor orbs, and I'll get into the less important ones now. You still have the same stuff like the scene players, Act 1, 2, and 3. Now the level select has an Act 1, 2, and 3 rather than just a full-on level select. You can have a bad weather cheat. You can put Cleaver in a diaper. That's a pretty funny one. You even see the return of the gun course, and they have a Ratchet and Clank themed one you can unlock, so nice little reference there.
Not bad shooting, Jack. For a guy. Now, I want you to protect my little baby with this, or else I'll hunt you down and hurt you real bad. Okay?
Wow, I didn't know you had so much.
The bosses of this game are really good. I actually think they're the best in the series, in my personal opinion. Like, there's a pretty cool Arrow boss, and I like his patterns. You fight him twice, actually, but both bosses I think are pretty good. The Precursor robot has a cool pattern to him. There's also like a Dark Maker thing you gotta fight. So, a lot of cool bosses like that, I'd say. Whereas with Jak 2, there wasn't really a lot of bosses. Jak 3 still doesn't have a ton, but I think they've kept consistent with them being good. So what I think of Jak 3? I think it was a really solid game. Definitely the best in the series, in my opinion. Although I do know that that's a very debated opinion. But I think Jak 3 has, in my opinion, the best of both worlds. It brings back stuff like the Daxter death animations. You know, the leapers are basically the old fluts. You have all the cool Jak 2 mechanics I liked, like the mission-based system. The more engaged, but slightly less good than 2's story. And you still have great, concise platforming as well. What would I rate it? Honestly, I'd give it a 9. It's a very solid game, and again, a lot of it is probably nostalgia. This is my opinion, though. But yeah, great game. I absolutely love it. Without further ado, though, I hope you all enjoyed my hopefully concise review of Jak 3, and who knows, maybe next time we'll do a concise review of Jak X. I'll see you all in the next review, and I'm out. Peace.